Welcome into NFL Daily. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, I've got 4 NFL trades that I think could actually happen before the start of the 2025 NFL season. There's a lot of trade rumors floating around out there. Most of it is garbage. Most of it will never happen. Today, I got 4 trades that actually have a chance to come to fruition here during the 2025 offseason. But before we get into the trade ideas today, go ahead and give me a follow if you want more NFL content on X. You can find me at Jack_Sperry. Going to be putting out a ton of quarterback stuff on there this offseason as I ready my official top 32 quarterback rankings for the NFL season here in 2025. So if you guys want in-depth statistical analysis on all 32 starting quarterbacks this year, you'll find me at Jack_Sperry. So the first trade that we're going to talk about today is Trey Hendrickson, all right, the NFL sack leader last year at 17.5 sacks, going to the Washington Commanders. Now, it's certainly possible that Hendrickson and the Bengals could figure it out, but at this current point in time, it's getting pretty ugly between Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. It seems like Hendrickson is very disappointed with the way the Bengals have negotiated, or kind of lack of negotiation that they've had with Hendrickson this offseason, and the Bengals kind of feel like, hey, we've offered you this contract, take it or leave it, kind of style of negotiation. Of course, the Bengals are very well known for being extremely tough negotiators. And after locking up Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, there's certainly questions about whether they have enough money to lock up Trey Hendrickson long term. This is what Trey had to say a couple of weeks back about his current negotiations with the team. No communication has taken place between my camp and the organization post-draft. The offers prior to the draft did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised last offseason if I continued to play at a high level. Coaches are aware of these past conversations. Rather than using collaboration to get us to a point to bring me home to the team, they are no longer communicating. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there is no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals. If I sat here with 4 sacks, they'd want a pay cut and some money back. I'm not going to apologize for the rates being paid to defensive ends in the National Football League. So very strong language there from Hendrickson, who is clearly upset with the way negotiations have gone down between him and the Bengals organization. And hey, if it gets to a point where the Bengals feel like, all right, let's just cut bait with him and give him a fresh start somewhere else, Washington is the team that makes the most sense to me, because they are still very much in need of a number 1 edge rusher, and they are trying to win Super Bowls now while they still have Jaden Daniels on his rookie contract. And as you guys can see here, this was a need for the Commanders going into the draft, and they didn't add a single edge rusher in the entire draft. They got Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, Cleveland Ferrell is kind of expected to be their top 3 guys, but Trey Hendrickson would immediately make this group better, not only on the defensive line, but for the defense as a whole there for Dan Quinn's unit in Washington. The last 2 years, Hendrickson has had 17.5 sacks. He also forces fumbles. He creates havoc in the backfield. Hendrickson is one of the most productive players in the entire National Football League and is a legit number 1 edge rusher that the Commanders could certainly love to add. And another thing with Washington is that they've got plenty of money in future seasons to pay Trey Hendrickson the money that he wants on his next deal. This offseason, we've seen guys like Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter get around $35 million per season, and Myles Garrett, of course, got that whopping $40 million per season to come back to the Cleveland Browns. Hendrickson has said in the past, he has said this on the Pat McAfee show, that he's not looking for Myles Garrett money, but I think he probably wants to be the second highest paid edge rusher in football, surpassing Danielle Hunter at somewhere between $35.7 and $37 million per season is probably where I'm guessing he is asking for, and the Bengals are probably offering him less than the $35 million per season Max and Danielle got with their respective teams this year. So if anyone's going to pay up for Trey Hendrickson, I think it will be Washington. They are a team that has their franchise quarterback locked and loaded. I do think that they'd be probably be willing to give the Bengals the most in terms of trade compensation as well. But the issue here, guys, is that Washington doesn't have a lot of draft capital in 2026. They've done a lot of trading this year. Deebo Samuel, they traded away a couple picks next year for Laramie Tunsil, their new left tackle. And right now, they only have 5 draft picks in the 2026 NFL draft. So if, say, they give up a 3rd-round pick for Trey Hendrickson, you don't have any picks in rounds 2 through 4, all right? So that is a significant dip. So to get Hendrickson, I think that Adam Peters, the Commanders GM, is going to have to get a little bit creative, but I absolutely think there is something a deal that can be struck here that is fair for both sides. This is what I would offer if I was the Washington Commanders. All right, the Commanders get Trey Hendrickson, and they get the Bengals' second-round pick next year, and in exchange, the Bengals will get the Commanders' first-round pick, so you essentially swap first and second-round picks in 2026. The Bengals will get an additional fourth-round pick in 2027, plus Dorrance Armstrong, somebody that can be a starter for them in the interim, alongside first-round rookie there in Cincinnati, Shamar Stewart. All right, so I think that this is a deal that benefits both sides, and I think the Bengals probably do want to get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson, and that is absolutely a possibility. I'm not saying this is for sure going to happen. I'm just saying if it does get to the point where Hendrickson is getting traded, I think the Commanders are the team that's probably going to be willing to pay the most in order to get him. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will Trey Hendrickson be traded this offseason? Predict it by simply giving me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I'm talking about Prize Picks today, find that pinned comment at the top of the comment section and give me a yes or a no. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks, which is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2-player stat projections for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, and you can also turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the championship. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. All you guys got to do again is find 2 to 6 player stat projections, do more than or less than, and if you get them all right, or if you do a flex play, you get most of them right, you can win some cold hard cash with our friends at Prize Picks today. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, run your game. Now we'll shift to our second trade idea of the day here, which is Jalen Ramsay going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I think that this is one where if I am Pete Carroll, the new head coach there in Las Vegas, I'm over 70 years old. I just, traded for and signed Geno Smith to a long-term contract. I just drafted Ashton Jeanty in the first round of the NFL draft. I'm trying to win now in Las Vegas, all right? Like, this is a team that has not been a legit playoff contender in a very, very long time, and Carroll, who is definitely not a super long-term solution there in Las Vegas, probably wants to win right away. The problem is that their cornerback room is absolute garbage, maybe the worst in the National Football League. Right now, their top 2 corners on the outside are expected to be Eric Stokes and Jacorian Bennett. They also drafted Darian Porter out of Iowa State, who's got a lot of potential, but I think he needs at least a year or 2 before he can really become what he's capable of becoming. Very physically talented player there. The Cameron Richardson is another guy that could come up the ranks this year. And then Darnay Holmes is expected to be the nickelback for the Las Vegas Raiders. And, I think that Ramsey instantly upgrades this group, all right? I like Eric Stokes a lot better as a number 2 corner than as a number 1. And, Jaylen Ramsay is still playing at number 1 cornerback level in the National Football League, in my opinion. Now, in terms of trade compensation for Ramsey, I think that it's going to be somewhere, probably an early day 3 draft pick. He still has a pretty expensive contract that the Raiders need to take on here. So I think a 4th-round pick is more than fair for the Miami Dolphins, who are expected to trade Jalen Ramsey, but probably after June 1st this year. So don't expect a trade until the new month gets here. And some people don't think that a trade will come down until July. But if it does happen, I do think the Raiders are a team that might be the most desperate to get a legitimate number 1 corner in their room. They certainly need it. But also the Los Angeles Rams are a team that is being heavily linked to Jalen Jaylen Ramsay. He used to play there in LA. He was one of the highest graded corners in all of football when he was playing there with Sean McVay in the Los Angeles Rams defense. And they're trying to win now with Matthew Stafford as well. So keep your eye out for the Rams. But today, I think the Raiders are more desperate for that number one corner. So that's why I went with the Raiders here. My third trade that I'm going to talk about here, Romeo Doubs, or Doubs, from the Green Bay Packers going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers traded away George Pickens earlier this offseason, and now their wide receiver room doesn't look nearly as good as it did before the George Pickens trade. All right, you got DK Metcalf, who he traded for this offseason. He's great, but then you got Calvin Austin III, who is very tiny. He's a good route runner, and he's underrated after the catch. He's a pretty darn good, vertical threat as well. But he is also somebody that just is not going to run block, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do there with Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. They want somebody that's going to run block, and that's why they got Robert Woods. But I think the Steelers can do a lot better than Robert Woods in terms of their early down specialist at wide receiver. And there's still some options out there that can be a legit number 2 wide receiver. And I think Romeo Doubs from Green Bay is something that's pretty realistic here. You take a look at the wide receiver room for the Packers this year. They bring in Mecole Hardman. They bring in Matthew Golden as a first-round wide receiver. They bring in Savion Williams as a day 2 draft pick. They still have Christian Watson. They still have Jaden Reed. They still have Dontavian Wicks. They still got Bo Melton. This is a very loaded and very cramped Packers wide receiver room, and somebody's going to have to go here. And if anybody's going to go, I think Doubs makes the most sense because he actually acted out last year in Green Bay for not getting enough targets in this offense, and now that you interject Matthew Golden into this group, he's going to get even less targets. So if you're trying to avoid a headache there in Green Bay, I think Doubs makes a lot of sense to let go of. Plus, he fits what Pittsburgh's looking for in terms of being a bigger, really good route running type of Z wide receiver. I think he fits what the Steelers want to a T. And then also, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. And Doubs showed off a really good chemistry with Rodgers in Green Bay in his rookie season back in 2022. So in terms of the trade compensation, I think what's fair is a 5th-round pick. The Steelers get their number 2 receiver that's a big body and can provide some help in the run blocking department on early downs. That's also a really good run blocker, has chemistry with their likely number 1 quarterback this year. And then the Packers get an additional draft pick for 2026, and they alleviate some of the needs that they have in that wide receiver room because it's just so cramped at this point in time. Now, we have one more trade idea to get to here in just a second. But first, if you're loving the NFL and you're loving today's video, make sure you click that like button today to help out the YouTube algorithm, help this video be the best it can possibly be. Greatly appreciate all of your guys' support here at Chat Sports. Then the final trade, I'm going to have the Steelers get another player here, and that's Kirk Cousins going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I will say this is probably the least likely trade on this list. I do think it's realistic in the sense of if Aaron Rodgers decides to retire and not go play NFL football this year and decides not to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, then I think Pittsburgh's backup plan would be Kirk Cousins because he's played in this style of kind of play action heavy, run heavy type of offense his entire career, going back to the Washington Redskins, all the way to the Minnesota Vikings, and then, of course, the Atlanta Falcons. It's very similar offensive structure, and I think that Kirk Cousins, even though he showed some deterioration last year, that first year off the Achilles injury, threw a lot of interceptions. I believe it was 9 interceptions in his last 5 games because his arm strength just wasn't there anymore. I think the positive spin on that is that he's a franchise quarterback that's been doing this for a long time, super smart, throws with great anticipation and accuracy, and then the second year off an Achilles injury is usually much better than that first year off the Achilles injury. So if you're a Steelers fan and you're looking for an established veteran quarterback that you can still get if Rodgers hangs you out to dry, I think the guy that you look at here is Kirk Cousins. I think what a trade could look like here is very similar to what the Steelers did in the Justin Fields trade last year, a conditional 6th-round pick that can turn into like a 5th or a 4th-round pick depending on the percentage of offensive snaps that Kirk Cousins plays for the Steelers this year. Last year for Fields, it was 50%. And, of course, he didn't play 50% of the offensive snaps, so it was just a 6th-round pick that went to the Chicago Bears. But this way, the Steelers can get a potential franchise quarterback in their locker room, and if he's good, then it's like, all right, fine, 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick, that's absolutely worth it. But if not, we put in Will Howard or Mason Rudolph in the second half of the season, and we only give the Falcons a 6th-round pick. So I think that this is something that could benefit both sides. There's not a whole lot of a market for Kirk Cousins right now, so I do think that the Falcons would probably come to the table on that. So let me know down there in the comments section. We talked about 4 realistic trade ideas, at least in my opinion. Talked about Trey Hendrickson, Jalen Ramsay, of course, Romeo Doubs, and then Kirk Cousins today. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Which of these 4 trades is the most realistic? And let me know your thoughts on these trades down there in the comments section. But that'll be it for today's edition of NFL Daily by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. Again, you can follow me on X at Jack_Sperry if you haven't already. And you can always click that subscribe button right here for daily NFL coverage for free right here on YouTube.